Norma Gigaba testifying earlier today. So very much a family affair at the State Capture Commission. Let's speak now to Ferial Haffajee, Associate Editor of the Daily Maverick. Ferial, thank you so much for joining us. You know, I'm watching the testimony from both of them. I'm not sure if this gives us insight into just how little divorcing couples can actually agree on, or a ringside seat into the detailed workings of state capture, as you pretty much tweeted last night. What did you make, first of all, of what Norma Ngoma had to say?
So good afternoon, Sally. I must say that I found Ms. Mngoma on both her two outings at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry a very compelling witness. She'd obviously been brought there by personal circumstance. And the reason I felt it was compelling is that she really gave us insight into the mechanisms of state capture. And I think the reason that witnesses like her and Angelo Agrizzi of Bosasa are so interesting and keep us on the edge of our seats is that they were insiders to the game. So they're giving you things that all other whistleblowers, etc., who are the real heroes of the story, but they can't give you the insights into why people did what they did. And that why was answered today. It's because you want beautiful suits and you are used to a sponsored life of cars, etc. Ms. Ngoma said that her husband Malusi had never ever bought his own car, that he's always had his life sponsored. So that's why I found her testimony very, very compelling, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's quite a substantial part of the final report.
Yeah, and I thought it was fascinating how on her account she detailed the conflict her husband went through, that he was told he had to do the Guptas' bidding,
yes.
But emotionally it put him under such strain and stress. So showing that if indeed there was this transactional relationship, he paid an incredibly high price in terms of stress and his mental health for all those fabulous suits.
Absolutely. I mean, I was interested to watch the afternoon testimony this time by Mr. Gigaba himself. And as somebody who's covered him for over 20 years now, from when he was a really feisty young lion, the president of the ANC Youth League, he's a diminished character. And I suppose that's the cautionary tale of corruption and state capture, is that you become less of what you could have been. And we've seen that with other characters, be it your Brian Molefe, Marcela Coco, etc. But what was really interesting last night was when Ms. Ngoma said that he had developed migraines because he couldn't take the pressure that was coming from Ajay Gupta mainly. He's the kind of lieutenant of the Gupta state capture family. And Mr. Gupta had even said to him, remember why we put you there. And I'm sure that's a very high psychological cost to bear.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was that moment where Norma Ngoma said to him, well, if it's so awful, why don't you just say no to all this pressure? And he said, apparently, very tellingly, I can't. Do you think that suggests that the power was coming from higher than the Guptas in terms of perhaps the president?
Well, I think it's pretty clear is that the Zondo Commission of Inquiry wants to inquire from our former President Jacob Zuma on 40 different areas. And the Transnet and public enterprise contracts over which Mr. Gigaba, it now turns out, had nominal influence and control. The real puppet master there, was the real power, was the President doing exactly what Ajay Gupta had suggested be done, their kind of strategy of state capture mapped out at Saxonwell. So definitely. She also said another telling thing last night, Sally, that he was so certain that he would never be replaced by the president that he was quite shocked when he was moved to Home Affairs, and it was seen as a negative move, as a demotion almost.
You say that compared, over the 20 years that you've been covering Malusi Gigaba, when he was a sort of a feisty young lion and now a diminished man, in your words. What did you make of what he had to say to the Commission? What were the significant moments this afternoon for you?
Well, I suppose he's a very, as usual, as he always has been, a very convincing character. He's a humorous person. I loved the humor between him and the judge. Unlike Mngoma, he sat facing the judge, so his body language was a lot more comfortable, a lot more confident. And if you hadn't followed the long tail of this commission, you might well have thought the guy did nothing. But actually, when you begin to now, as we call it, join the dots and put all the evidence together, that hollowed out his evidence, because so much of what we've seen disproves what he said today. Be it about the 1,064 locomotives bought by Transnet for a lot of money. Almost none of them are working as far as I can tell. What happened at SAA, what happened at Denel, all of which were under his purview. The evidence we now know made that his testimony today rang hollow, or it at least did for me, because we've been following this commission for such a long time.
What do you make of what happened last night to bring the commission to quite an abrupt halt? We know that Norma Ngoma said, look, I'm actually fine, everything's okay, but there was a security scare. Just how high are the stakes here, do you think, Ferial? Just how much danger is there in being so frank in your version of events to the commission?
Well, I suppose a lot of danger, because the previous time she testified, just at the exact same period, there was the attempted break-in to where the investigators sit. Now, that is the real heart of the commission, because they have all the evidence that eventually gets to the open hearings. And for me, I felt almost like those are intimidation tactics. They meant to stir chaos. They meant to make the commission look vulnerable. Last night, we don't know what happened, but it was apparently 2 unmarked cars which were driving in the precinct late at night, and some staffers got worried by that and called a fairly big contingent of police in. I think that the judge and his team have to be super careful now, Sally, because it's coming to end days, the end of June, and the stakes at play here are massive, that we're likely to see more intimidation tactics in this final month. And the judge was at once being careful, or his security was, but he was also making sure that it restarted this morning, that those attempts to derail his commission really don't get much struck, that they don't work.
So Ferial, where are we going from here? We know that Malusi Gigaba, I think he's still going to cross-examine his estranged wife. What are the consequences in the possible way forwards? First of all, for the commission that has to look at this sort of he said, she said, weigh up every other story that's been told, but also for them as individuals. You know, you say that Malusi Gigaba is a diminished man. What does the future hold for him? And also for Mrs. Gigaba. I mean, these are, at the heart of it really, is also a family that's broken apart.
That's the tragedy of it. What I didn't buy into, that I saw a lot on social media, was this idea of, the quite sexist idea of the scorned woman having her revenge on her husband. I don't think it was that. It was very clearly that him calling the Hawks and having her arrested had been kind of the last straw which brought her to the commission. They, in fact, approached her. I don't know what happens to the couple, but certainly Malusi Gigaba has got 2 more outings at the Zondo Commission, and next week we should be seeing President Cyril Ramaphosa, this time wearing his presidential hat, doing his final 2 days. And today the judge was quite clear that the commission has to draw to a close the open hearings part, at least by the end of May, because thereafter they only have a month to produce that report. It probably means they're going to have to ask for a couple more months, because obviously everybody named in the report has to get sight of it beforehand.
Thank you so much for giving us such a concise and easy to understand look at the workings of the Commission and this really important testimony. Really do appreciate. Always lovely to chat to Ferial Haffajee, Associate Editor of the Daily Maverick.